It's a vampire wedding, and WotC have gone all out on everything from the centerpieces to the canapes. But are these extravagant nuptials dripping with class, or a tacky disaster? Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast, where we talk about all things magic, flavour design and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
And today we're going to be talking about Innistrad Crimson Vow. We finally got here. And we're gonna combine two episodes. So for all of these sets, as you probably know, being a regular listener, and if you're not a regular listener, this is how we've kind of fallen into the rhythm of doing these things. We will usually do for a new set a hype episode, a mechanics episode where we look at the flavour of the new mechanics coming into the set and what we think of them. And then we'll do a flavour picks episode where we kind of have a look at the set once it's all been spoiled and pick out individual cards or themes or cycles or whatever that we think really make the set pop. That's what we do for sets, especially when we return to them. When we go to new planes, we replace the hype episode with like a world building episode to kind of flesh out what we know about the new plane. Because we already had Midnight Hunt recently, and Innistrad Crimson Vow is kind of, I mean, it's not a whole new set, really. I mean, it is, because it's 282 cards, but it's, they're doing something different with this, right? It's very soon release after, and it kind of, to stop us from burning out too much, we're going to combine our hype episode with our flavor picks episode. So we're going to take the things that we just internally, Nathan and I, really like about Crimson Vow, or some of the things actually we really don't like, because there are a few things in this particular set that I personally really dislike, and I will talk about them. And I know there are a few things that you're not hugely keen on as well, Nathan. But we're going to combine that with our picks as well as kind of sort of flag posts for like, we like this card because it represents this thing that we really like in this set. Then we're going to do a mechanics episode, so we're going to flip those around. So we will do a mechanics of this set episode because it is important to talk about all the new mechanics coming in, because they are, for better or for worse, quite flavorful in this set, but we will get to that. Then we will do a story narrative episode like we usually do once all the story episodes are released. And then Nathan and I are thinking of doing a whole episode talking about all the different art treatments across Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow, because there are a lot of them. And that in itself is something worth talking about, let alone the actual stylistic choices of all the different individual card styles and card frames. So yeah, there's still quite a lot of Innistrad to get through, so it's probably a good idea that we compress these two episodes into one. I mean, what are your feelings as a whole on this set, Nathan, Crimson Vow?
So, I feel like it's funny, right? I feel like two sets are kind of like a breathe in, breathe out, and I feel like the inhalation maybe might have been more interesting than the exhalation. I mean, we had a little conversation with a little natter beforehand, and I kind of feel like there's something inherently, and I kind of want Andy to kind of convince me otherwise. There's something inherently lackluster about this set, in my mind. I don't know why, beyond the fact that I think I have an issue with sets that revolve around a very specific event, a very small event. I quite like, as I've realised, especially when we're doing like return sets, I feel like the expansion of the world lore is kind of important. And there is a fair bit of this in this set, but I feel like I can't work out if it's a good thing or a bad thing to have a set that's entirely focused around the specific event, the specific wedding-y kind of feel. And as much as I do feel like they did a very good job of representing it across like a lot of cards, it does feel maybe a touch too focused. And it makes the rest of the cards kind of feel a little more superfluous, because either they're not playing to the theme of the wedding, and so they're kind of left in limbo, or they are playing deeply into the theme of the wedding. And because I think like deep-seated wise, I'm like, fuck Olivia, why is she trying to do? I think it was like I've got like a narrative pushback against the wedding. So any of the cards about the wedding, I'm like, oh yada, it's all about Olivia. Or like, whatever, fuck you, Olivia. This isn't all about you. There's the whole of the rest of Innistrad going on. And I didn't feel it as much. I didn't feel it as much in the first set. I don't know why. It felt like there was more. It felt like it was tackling more than just one event, that Harvest Tide, build up a massacre. I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm hoping you convince me otherwise.
I don't know if I can convince you otherwise, because the reasons I like this set, and I like this set way more than I thought I would. I think when we were talking about Midnight Hunt, I was like, cool, the werewolves. We haven't seen the werewolves really that much in Innistrad before in previous sets. All about the werewolves. Okay, I guess we've got to do the vampires then, fine. We've seen enough of fucking vampires, and yeah, whatever, they've got a kitschy kind of wedding feel, which would be fun, but I mean, whatever, we're done with them. I actually like this set way more card for card than I thought I would, but for the reasons that you dislike it. I like the fact that it's low to the ground and it's really centric on this wedding feel. I like the fact that we don't necessarily see the rest of Innistrad. We've already had 2 sets. We had a full block when we first came here, 3-set block, and then a 2-set block. Like Theros, for example, didn't get another 2-set block, or a 3-set block. So I kind of feel like we've had enough time to see Innistrad doing other Innistrad-y things. And if there's not some huge cataclysmic event going on, I don't know if we need to see what's going on everywhere else. We'll get a little taste of it in other cards, but no, this is about the vampire wedding, and I kind of like that. But I do see what you mean. There is a lot of stuff in this set that I don't think sings quite as loudly as in sort of other sets that we're used to, where it's like, oh wow, this whole sort of cycle of cards, this whole mechanic, or this whole setting really like pops. I do think it is maybe a little bit more subdued as a set, but I think card for card there is actually a lot in here, and it was actually very easy for me to do my flavor picks. In fact, I had to chop them down. I usually have to kind of stretch for the last maybe 2 to kind of go what really grabs me. But I got to like 6 or 7, and I was like, "Oh wow, I need to maybe just decide or like compress a couple of things together." So yeah, so I think I had the opposite reaction with you for almost exactly the same reasons. I will say, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, there are a couple of cards in this set which I actually think are dire in terms of their flavor. And maybe not for the usual reasons, and maybe they're a little bit petty, which is why I'm going to save those for the very end, because I think I have far more to talk about that's positive than negative, but the negatives are big for me. So we will get to that. Interesting. This is going to be awkward, because my first flavor pick. Shall we dive into them?
Yeah, please. Yeah, go ahead.
So my
Absolutely.
first flavor pick is the very low to the ground design of Bride's Gown and Groom's Finery. Bride's Gown is a artifact equipment for 1 and a white, and it has equipped creature gets +2/+0. It gets an additional +0/+2 and has first strike as long as an equipment named Groom's Finery is attached to a creature you control with a equip cost of 2, and it's Eric Deschamps. The artwork shows Olivia's bridal gown that she wears, or bridal armor, I suppose. And then Groom's Finery is 1 and a black for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0. It gets an additional +0/+2 and has Death Touch as long as an equipment named Bride's Gown is attached to a creature you control. Cards are getting so wordy these days. Equip cost is 2. Artwork by Eric Deschamps, and it shows Edgar Markov's groom clothes in a little coffin-shaped box. So it's the wedding between Olivia and Edgar. I realise we haven't necessarily done like a big sort of storyline sort of prep for this. If you don't know, this whole wedding is between Olivia Voltaren and Edgar Markov, and there are story articles going out. We're going to kind of ignore them for this Flavor Picks episode for the most part. We will do a full story episode, obviously, going forwards. But yes, a lot of this is going to be to do with their relationship. And I really love it. Come on, it's really cute. It's just 2 really little low to the ground cards that bounce off each other. It's the bride's clothes and the groom's clothes, and they do exactly the same thing except for a couple of keyword changes. And if you have them both on the battlefield, they both get stronger because they're getting bonded in the like holy matrimony of weddings. I don't know. I am a married person, and even I don't necessarily know all the terminology. But yeah, it's cute, isn't it? This is cool card design.
I suppose what the armor kind of gives them more power, but when they're joined with the other one, it gives them more toughness in terms of like the ability to stick it out. I mean, yeah, I
Well,
feel
sure, and also it's definitely because it's a marriage of like houses coming together, isn't it? Like
sure.
that's going to be the thing. So it's making them more overtly powerful. Like there's all these kind of what do you call them? Gentry weddings are really like it's combining of consolidating like wealth and power. So yeah, but you have loads of different cards in this set that kind of do the same sort of thing. And this is what I mean about like these aren't necessarily. I don't necessarily think these individual cards are like the bee's knees, but they represent something in the set which I really love, which are all these slightly lower to the ground card designs that make the set feel like it is doing the thing. So you have cards, for example, like Wedding Invitation, which is a 2-drop artifact. When Wedding Invitation enters the battlefield, draw a card. You get more information because you've got a wedding invite. Then you tap and sacrifice the Wedding Invitation. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. If it's a vampire, it also gains lifelink until end of turn. So it gives vampires access to areas they wouldn't previously have, and they're going to have a really good time. They're going to have lifelink. It's a little wedding invitation. RSVP at your own risk. Fucking excellent. Honeymoon Hearse, artifact vehicle, 2 and a red with trample, 5/5. Tap 2, untapped creatures you control. Honeymoon Hearse becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. You got 2 people in the Honeymoon Hearse. The Honeymoon Hearse activates. What? Come on. Like, you don't get this with sets like Ravnica and Zendikar and like Dominaria. These big high fantasy sets. Those are the sets that you can find generic, like, Holy Sword or, Gleaming Armor or whatever kind of cards you want to have that are just kind of generic fancy. It's sets like Innistrad and Eldraine that have the kind of smaller Strixhaven, that have the smaller flavor beats that you can find like really specific cards tied to a location and a time. And I just think they really nailed it with these ones. I really enjoy it.
I guess so. Yeah, no, I understand.
All right, then, fine.
Succinct. No, because I do understand where you're coming from, because we've had this issue before where, like, say even Adventures of the Forgotten Realm, like +1 mace or +2 mace or whatever it is. Like, you didn't even try. I mean, obviously that's the trope, right? That in D&D the artifacts and the equipment and everything are just generic, anyone can pick them up kind of thing. They don't all have like names like Excalibur or Sting or whatever. Like,
sure,
I do feel you, and I did like the Wedding Invitation quite a lot. Yeah, I guess. Do you know what would have really sold me? And that's if we'd got genuine vows. Like in Magic, there are vows, right? Like there's vow of flight and vow of I can't remember what the other ones off the top of my head, but like they're the enchantments that you put on your creatures, and you put the enchantment on the creature. It's goaded. I think it gets a +2/+2 in vigilance or any whatever generic mechanical word, and they can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. I would have liked to have seen like almost like a promise, like of a spell, almost like of their matrimony coming together. But otherwise, yeah, no. Yeah. I mean, you have convinced me. You have convinced me a little. I mean, I did see the hearse. I did think, okay, that's kind of cute. Not really in like cute. The taxidermy kind of like, good God, they pushed the flavour on that too much. It's a bit unsetty. Like it is, yeah. It kind of, it does work.
I mean, just to hammer my point home a little bit more, I'm actually also happy that they used more kind of generic, maybe kind of vanilla Magic mechanics to represent these things as well. Like they didn't have on Groom's Finery and Bride's Gown, like, put a groom counter on your bride or put a bride counter on your groom. Like they could have very easily done that because they have the kind of penchant for doing that at the moment. Like they kept it fairly down the middle of the line, gives it +2/+0, +2, fine, but it reads well. So yeah, I like it. Yeah, that's my first flavor pick. Cool. We've got a lot to get through. Let's move on to yours.
Okay, so my first pick is funnily enough also kind of a low to the grounder, and this is kind of like the opposite kind of thing, because this has nothing to do with the wedding, and it's Panicked Bystander. Panicked Bystander is a 2/2 for 1 and a white human peasant. When Panicked Bystander or another creature you control dies, you gain 1 life. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, transform Panicked Bystander. It flips into a human rogue cackling culprit. Whenever Cackling Culprit or another creature you control dies, you gain 1 life. 1 in a black. Cackling Culprit gains Death Touch until end of turn. It is a 3/5 on its reverse side. Flavor text on the front side: help! There's been a horrible murder! And on the back side, ha! They fall for it every time. Like,
call an ambulance, but not for me.
Not for me, right? It's so good. It's my macabre. Remember last set where there was the scarecrow that was made, and it was all about the widow, and she clearly killed her husband and got all of his real estate. It's that kind of idea. There's a guy who keeps pointing out all of these horrible murders and things that are happening, and it turns out it's him, and he's collecting body parts and putting them in jars and stuff. And these are the things where I feel like, I mean, maybe this is where my argument falls flat, right? Because this is literally in the same set as all of this other stuff that's going on, and maybe there are still opportunities for the low to the ground kind of like Innistrad in general. Like, because what I've put is sometimes it's the little things on Innistrad, aka fuck the vampire wedding, who cares? As I love how they hint at the normality of the macabre. Like there is this grandiose party and everything going on, but the generic day-to-day, like, Innistrad is a bit fucked up, and it's not just the monsters that are coming after the humans. Like, humans are also the monsters themselves. If you think about, like, Gisa and Geralf, like, they're both creating these massive hordes of zombies, and even like the generic peasants are bastards. They go around killing their husbands and causing murders and stuff. I don't know. For some reason, also, it makes me really, really happy that it looks a little bit like Jeff Bridges from The Big Lebowski. I don't know why that
Sure.
makes me so happy. And Cackling Culprit, it sings to me, and I feel like maybe this is indicative of the plane. I think we said this last set as well. If there is still so much space for normal horror tropes and normal kind of horror aspects, that I think that we could still come back a fourth time to Innistrad and kind of, maybe this is the other good point, right? Is that they've kind of sidetracked the last two sets of Innistrad and gone, don't worry about Innistrad as a whole. Let's focus on these two events that are happening. We'll still feed you little bits of the plane, but then we kind of gives them time to what's it to reassess and kind of like and give themselves another opportunity to do like a big broad stroke kind of set for Innistrad next time. Like, because Emrakul, as we'll get onto for me a little bit later, is clearly going to come back at some point. Like, they clearly set her up to be a big story beat. So maybe they did need these kind of like focus stories that kind of give small character details and kind of give everyone else like give a few of the characters a new card or a look in again to see them, how they've changed, that kind of thing, and they didn't have to do it in a big sweeping arc kind of way. Okay, fair enough. I guess, I told you to convince me. You've already almost convinced me after my first Flavour pick. So, but yeah, I just like these little ones. And also I like transform cards that aren't just, werewolves. Like, don't get me wrong, love werewolves,
Sure.
but I felt like there's an opportunity with some flip cards to kind of see other aspects of the set that isn't just the day-night cycle.
There are a lot of transform cards in this set as well, and they're really playing with this idea of not having necessarily both halves be the same even card type. Like, you've got Jacob Hauken in Spectre, which is a blue legendary creature from this set. Flips into a legendary enchantment, Hauken's Insight, and he's a mythic rare, sure, but it doesn't necessarily feel like a super pushed or super like flagship card. Like, it is just sort of the norm now. So I do like the kind of play that they're having with a lot of these flip cards. I mean, again, Gutter Skulker into Gutter Shortcut is a creature into an enchantment, because of course it would be if it's a spirit. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be a spirit on the back. It will imbue whoever is being possessed by the spirit. It kind of makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. The flavor of Disturb, I think, is really, really cool. But I think that's something we probably look at when we look at our mechanics. So I feel like that's done so much better this set than it was in the last set.
Oh, interesting. I already disagree, but we'll get on to that. Okay, cool. My next flavor pick is Gluttonous Guest, artwork by Jesper Icing. It's 2 and a black for a creature vampire, 1/4. When Gluttonous Guest enters the battlefield, create a blood token. Whenever you sacrifice a blood token, you gain 1 life. Don't give a shit about the mechanics. We'll get onto that in the next episode. Heads up, blood tokens suck. Anyway, Gluttonous. Hey, oh, hello. Ooh, I am funny. Gluttonous Guest. It's the humor of the set. This set is fucking funny. Like, this set is really funny, and I think that was really lacking in the last set, if I'm honest with you. I mean, Jesper Icing, this is an example because obviously Jesper Icing is the fucking king of putting in whimsy and sort of fun into his artworks without even really trying. Like, so the artwork in this set shows a vampire clearly at the wedding, the Markov Folderan wedding, with 2 huge goblets of blood that one of them they've literally just drained, and it looks like they're not even going to stop for breath. And there are vampires in the background looking at the vampire in the foreground, being like, "Oh, how uncouth!" Even in vampire culture, this person is just clearly just way over the top and needs to slow down. Like, as you get in every wedding, there's always one person that you think, "All right, you need to like knock it on the head." Like, this is a wedding, not your local pub. Like, chill out. But I mean, it's not to do Midnight Hunt a disservice. Like, I'm not trying to say that Midnight Hunt was boring. There were, like that card that you mentioned about the woman who, butchers her husband and then makes him a scarecrow. There were little flavor beats and little macabre sort of dark humor beats in Midnight Hunt. I just feel like the inherent setting of a vampire wedding is far more fun and far more prone to whimsy than a Harvesttide festival that gets massacred by a bunch of werewolves. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's already enough humor in just the pitches, the one versus the other, and I think they really played on it. There are other cards as well that are really good for this. Like you have like Dying to Serve and Undead Butler, which are all the zombie like butlers for the wedding security. The idea that a vampire wedding needs security, I've always found that funny in fantasy media. Whenever there's like some super dangerous thing that they need to go to their holdout, and they have like guards, like in Star Wars. Why do the Sith need security? I don't understand. Why do they need those like royal guards or whatever, or like empirical guards? Like Emperor Palpatine's got those red motherfuckers. He's Emperor Palpatine. He
Yeah,
doesn't.
if
He doesn't
anything,
need guards.
you should be
Like,
defended by things that are stronger than you, not
yeah,
things that
right.
are weaker than you. Yeah.
Catapult Fodder, which is another Jesper Icing artwork, shows a bunch of zombies in a catapult that's about to be fired on the flip side of that card by another zombie. Like, I just find there are so many instances in this set where they've clearly thought, like, this is where we're going to have a lot of fun with just the idea of Innistrad. And if you live on this nightmare plane full of like horror and despair, you're probably going to find your humor where you can find it. And you know, it's the classic thing of, this is why TV shows like The Addams Family and The Munsters, and in more recent years things like Hotel Transylvania, like, is all these sort of, you know, backwards ideas of what's funny. You know, like, oh, the Munsters like it when it's raining because it's a more beautiful thing than when it's sunny. You know, it's that kind of thing. The beautiful human character in The Munsters is considered ugly by the Monster family, and it's all these kind of, you know, reverse jokes that I guess are kind of simple, but they read really well. And yeah, I just sort of feel like this set is having a lot more fun than Midnight Hunt. Midnight Hunt spoke to people in a very different way, and this, I'll get onto this in my next flavor pick as well. But Midnight Hunt did a really good job of capturing the human experience of going into the darker winter months, like as a species. Whereas they don't need to do that in this set. What they're playing on in this set are people's preconceptions of weddings versus monsters. And yeah,
Yeah,
I just,
the knight doesn't really come in at all in this set whatsoever. Actually, now I think
not
about it.
really. On a few of the like story spotlight cards, quote unquote story spotlight cards, like there are obviously like story beats where it really matters. But for the set
Yeah.
in general, they're not playing with that idea. They're playing with a lot of other conventions that we have about, you know, about celebration and what we find grotesque. You know, to a vampire, draining a big goblet of blood is celebratory, whereas obviously we find that disgusting. You know, it's all those kind of jokes, and
Yeah.
it's not my humor like exclusively. Like, this isn't what I sit around like laughing at in my downtime, but in the context of this set, I think they just had a lot of fun, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's funny. Right? I've got two bounce backs off of that. One, I love that you said that you loved the dying to serve or thing. I think in the original, because the first, when it was first spoiled, it was spoiled from a foreign language, and the Scryfall kind of like placeholder name was Dreadful Service, which is so much better than Dying to Serve. And every time I look at Dying to
Well,
Serve, I'm like, oh, you could have
I
been
think they're both
Dreadful
equally good.
Service.
Dreadful Service
Yeah,
is good. Dying to Serve is also quite good, I think. And I'm not
yeah,
a big fan of punny names. Like, I mean, in fact, as a little heads up into what I'm gonna like espouse on later, one of my most hated things in this set is a punny name.
okay,
But I
that's
think
fair.
Dying to Serve is fine. It's fine. It is fun.
And
They're having fun. Yeah.
yeah, and then also you've got, I hope it's not the same one, Aim for the Head as well, which is quite nice. It's almost like our resident what was it, eye shot or something. I can't remember, what was the Theros card where it was it would give minus one to a creature, or if it was a Cyclops, it would end up destroying it because it was
Oh,
like taking
sure.
up.
Yeah.
You know, that it's got that kind of idea. Aim for the head, like if it exiles a zombie, because obviously you go for the head, or it exiles opponent's two cards from an opponent's hand, which is actually also secretly very, very powerful. There's a lot of exile stuff in this set that I feel like pushes because graveyard. I like this side because I said this last set as well. Like, there's this feeling of when things go to the graveyard, like they kind of automatically they come back again, and that idea of almost like cremation or something should feel like you're exiling something from the graveyard. Like Bleed Dry is a really good example of this, of where it's giving -13 to a creature until end of turn. Cool, normal, fine. But that flavor of bleeding them dry, it's like, well, if it would die, instead it's exiled because there was literally nothing left of it to be able to bring back again. I kind of like that idea of where it kind of pushes the flavor of exile kind of more into the more, because exile is now much more prevalent, and also as the game expands, if we don't find more ways to kill things proper, kill things dead, then, you know, like the graveyard strategies only get better and better. The only thing I will say, one other thing, for it being Eternal Night, I'm scrolling through, there are a lot of cards that it looks like the sun's up. Just say
Yeah.
bloody betrayal, rural recruit, Why is there blue sky in your backgrounds? Just asking for a friend. Crushing
Yeah.
canopy. Yeah, there's blue sky in the background here. When is this taking place? Was it?
I suppose just from a real world artistic directive perspective, to have 280 odd cards all set at night time is a bit of a ask. Do you know what I mean?
I know, but that's kind of what the point of the set was, right? That's the thing I think that's kind of it irks me a little is that the whole like, oh, it's going to be Eternal Night. It's almost like it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
Like,
but do you remember when Amonkhet first released and everything was sun-blasted sand dunes, and initial response to it was, God, this set looks boring. I mean, that was my initial reaction to it, and then it was later on that I actually understood that Amonkhet and Hour of Devastation may be some of the greatest Magic sets of all time, like
right?
artistically.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I guess maybe that's where I feel like there's a thematic. Like, I mean, I guess that's the world theme, right? Is in the you've convinced me on like the event theme of the wedding. I do think it's quite nice to have again little cards like wedding security where it can only have taken place during a certain time in a certain place, and it kind of gives the card more flavor. It's just when other cards, things like Arm the Cathars, which is already like a generic kind of ability, it's just a pump effect for other creatures, and then also the art in the art, it's like, well, that could be taken place. Where's this taken place? And the fact there's sun in the background, automatically you'd assume it's not in Crimson Vow because Crimson Vow is the set of Eternal Night, right? And maybe that's where my confusion kind of sits a little bit on there.
I just think you're a fucking Vorthos nerd. You need to shut up. And play
I know
Playboy.
I am from that to from fine. I mean, isn't this exactly what this episode's supposed to be about?
That's exactly what this entire fucking podcast is meant to be about.
So good. Well, let's start talking about how Emrakul is still here and definitely still happening. Uvenwald Oddity, 2 green for a 4/4 trample haste beast. It's got an ability on it, a generic 5 and 2 green to transform Ulvenwald Oddity into an 8/8 Ulvenwald Behemoth. Trample, haste. Other creatures you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. Flavor text. Obviously, it's dangerous, but I've never seen anything like that. This could be an entirely new species. I say we follow it. Halana, Kessig Ranger. When it flips, we've learned enough. I say we run. Elena, Kessig Trapper. Now, a lot of people have said when this came out, all the mandibles on the reverse side look more like a crab, less like tentacles. There's loads of weird, crazy things on Innistrad, like there's, slug horrors and frog horrors and stuff like that. But the fact that Halana has never seen anything like this whole new species, and Elena's like, oh no, we've learned that's good enough, let's run. And the fact that its ability is exactly the same ability that the werewolves had from Eldritch Moon, of where you just play a generic amount of mana to flip it over. This is an Emrakul plant, right? This has got to be, and it feels.
I definitely felt at the lot of especially the blue cards in this set, and it ties into my next flavor pick as well. But obviously, I'll let you keep going. Is that there is a huge amount of Eldritch horror signifiers in this, way more than I thought they were ever going to do again. Like people weren't hugely up on the Eldritch horror last time we were around, and so I thought they were going to ditch it entirely. But nope, it's fucking here in force in this set, I tell you.
Yeah. And I feel like it's funny because they've kind of combined a lot again with the blues kind of spells, because they've kind of lent into this kind of the crack, exactly kind of what I wanted. I did say this last for the last set that I kind of wanted them to lean into like the seaside aspect of it, right? The krakens, the like. Again, we'll get onto the elephant in the room in a second from my flavor picks, but there's a little bit consuming tide. There's a few different cards that kind of hint at that kind of deep depths kind of aspect, and I'm just kind of I think the reason why I'm happy is because it did feel a little bit odd. In Zendikar, they kind of Eldrazi washed themselves, right? Of where they went, no, it's not in the set whatsoever. You got what Crumbling Monument, or I think was the only card in the entire set that kind of gave any hint that the Eldrazi were at some point happening. We kind of even in the story of Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow, you get a lot of talk about the travails, right? About the hardships, and yeah, for Innistrad, that's nothing new. Really, like having all these. Oh, the monsters are more monstery. Oh God. Oh, that werewolf's a little bit more fearsome. Oh no. Oh dear. Whatever shall we do? So it doesn't feel quite as prevalent or pronounced. But I'm kind of glad that they left these kind of hints, because I feel like they wanted Zendikar to be done with Eldrazi. Eldrazi are done. There's no more Eldrazi on Zendikar, but there is definitely still a fuck off Eldrazi, probably the most powerful of them all, in the moon. Yeah. So if they didn't have some hint of it, it would feel like a massive injustice. And I feel like, as much as Battle for Zendikar was okay. Can we fucking stop now, please, with Eldrazi? I still feel like Eldritch Moon did a really good job of kind of feeding that Eldritch horror in, and kind of, if again we'll say this for the end of time, it felt like this set should have been the other way around, of where you've got the mystery of what's going on in Innistrad, and you're like, oh my god, it's Emrakul, she's here, and then you go, oh well, let's go back to Zendikar. Oh, the other two Eldrazi monstrosities are wreaking havoc. Instead, they kind of buried the lead and they kind of fucked up that reveal, as it were. I'm kind of still glad that they still have aspects of that. And they're still able to go kind of like, yeah, there is still a wider arc outside of this, and we're not going to put a massive amount into it, and it still doesn't necessarily feel too much like, don't forget about Emrakul. Like, a lot of people are still convinced this isn't a plant for it, and I can see why they would think that.
Oh no, there are some cards in this set where I'm like, how, like, it's so clear that they're still trying to push the Emrakul influence. Like,
yeah,
some artwork could have been straight out of Shadows over Innistrad. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, exactly. And there was a few things like I don't want to say like concealing curtains because it's the eye motif, right? Concealing curtains into the all-seeing eye is something also Emrakul related, but there weren't really eye things or tentacly things on Innistrad before. Like, I like this idea of where there's this one Eldrazi horror that's kind of going, I'm just gonna chill out in this house over here, and if anyone wants to come and see me, I'm just behind the curtain. Ooh, cheeky, sneaky, like that kind of idea. Like, I don't think that's necessarily what they're playing on there, but I do. Yeah, I'm glad they didn't abandon some of the themes that have kind of integral now to Innistrad. Like, yes, okay, the werewolves have their own plight, and the humans have their own plight, and even the vampires have their own agenda, but there is still this overarching kind of bigger plane out there. Like, we don't see very many demons, we don't see very many devils in this set at all. I think we see one of each, both of which I'm kind of a bit disappointed at, because I'd quite like those, how this plane specifically handles the cycle of demons and like the way that devils kind of exist, because they only really properly exist on this plane. I mean, yeah, they're on Ravnica as well a lot with the Rakdos, but they're also tied specifically almost to that gestury kind of like feel. Whereas I feel like this is like a different spin, and it's quite nice just to see the other parts of the plane still affecting the set and still being kind of elevated and still being left in there, because it could have been very easy to focus too hard, I think, on the Vampire Wedding, kind of leave the rest of the... Man, I'm literally, what I'm doing is convincing myself that what I said initially is wrong. Good, see, that's what I wanted to do. That's all I want to be doing. All I want to do is complain and then be wrong, Andy. That's what I want in life, and I'm succeeding. Yeah. Cool. That's it. That's my segue into all things Emrakul. You go.
Well, my next one kind of ties into it a little bit anyway. This is Erith, Tormented Prophet, which is 1 blue red for a legendary creature, human wizard, 2/4. If you would draw a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library instead. You may play those cards this turn. The flavor text reads, she is cursed with visions of monsters and suffering, and all her visions come true. And the artwork is by Ekaterina Burmak. I mean, this card as a whole could have been its own flavor pick. It's fucking amazing. Just the flavor of it, the idea of this, like, tormented prophet is literally in the name, the whole kind of thing. You see the little devils like tormenting Erith, and obviously this whole idea that on Innistrad you can sort of there's this weird cognitive dissonance of you can be tormented by visions and considered to be, mad, and people don't listen to you, but they're also on a plane where all these things can actually happen. Like, it's really weird to me that in any fantasy setting there'd be any sort of sense of like, oh well, that's impossible, that would never happen. You live in a fantasy world, anything is literally possible. But I suppose they have to create some sort of drama. The thing that I'm focusing on really with this card is the artwork. So Extreme Burmak for Erith Tormented Prophet, this particular artwork is stunning, but it's actually, for me, representative of the set as a whole. There are some artworks in this set which I am absolutely blown away by, and it also, the thing that I'm merging this with, I was going to do another separate flavor pick where I was going to talk about the kind of return of very classic horror to Innistrad. Like, we had Eldritch Horror in the last time we were here in Midnight Hunt. As much as the set visually as a whole looked really good, there were actually very few individual artworks that really blew me away in Midnight Hunt. Again, it did a very good job as a whole collection of cards of evoking a very specific feeling and part of a human experience, and I think Midnight Hunt did that really well. But actually, individual cards wise, maybe not quite so many amazing artworks. But this set is just, this is what I mean when I say card for card, this set is actually really fantastic. There are so few duds in this set, and there are so many really surprising artworks. I mean, talking again about Erith, Like this is a Rembrandt painting. This is like an old Dutch master's grotty, muddy, almost ugly, but incredibly beautiful and detailed, and just evoking this incredible sense of dread across the set. And then you have a look, you just start looking through, and you just start looking through at other cards. I mean, there are a few that I poked out and as kind of individual ones. So you have something like Cruel Witness is another one by Vincent Pruss, and Screaming Swarm by Arena Nordsoul. Again, with the eye motif, and there's tentacles. Again, this is what I was saying about, like, Emrakul is definitely here. Like, you look at Screaming Swarm, or it's a flock of seagulls with tentacles coming out of their mouths, and in the middle of the tentacles is a glowing blue eye. It's
Yeah.
fucking Emrakul, boys. Like, come on, let's get on board here. Like, and
Yeah.
again with Cruel Witness, you have this bird horror where all the wings are eyes, and its own eyes are kind of like searing through into your soul. There are so many other artworks as well, which are just incredibly beautiful. And then on top of that, you have Sam Gay returning with Demonic Bargain and Chained
Right.
Fortune.
What a fucking artwork. Oh.
Sam fucking Gay. I'm going to repeat this. Sam fucking Gay. Get them in every goddamn set going. I know we say this for every artist that we like. I know we say it about the Wiley Beckett's. I know we say it about Niels Harm. I know we say it about Sam McKinnon. But honestly, like,
Arguably, Niels Ham and Sam McKinnon have very similar art styles, and Sam Gay and Wiley Beckett have very similar art styles. Maybe
oh
we
sure,
just really
and also
like those
again,
very
like,
specific art
we have.
styles.
Oh, you
But that's
almost
the
can't.
point, right?
Yeah.
You can't.
Well,
You
yeah, very
can't.
sure.
You can't get away from it. They stand
You
out
can't
so
not.
much.
Also, again, I will address that Sam Gay is no relation of Rebecca Gay, even though their art styles are very similar, because Sam Gay actually mentored underneath Rebecca Gay. So there is like a weird, like, little back and forth there. But yeah, like, the set visually, card for card, again, I think is just incredibly beautiful. And, like, I mean, I'm just going to literally just scroll down Scryfall and then just stop randomly, and I'm sure I could just pick one out. I mean, yeah, again, you have Skywarp Scarb is an incredibly, like, interesting, beautiful picture of a zombie drake that we've seen a million times, but this one's far more evocative of the Scarb flying in front of the moon, and it's got these, like, almost like feathered wings, which is really incredible. That's fucking just random
Blood
scry again.
Servitor as well,
Yeah.
Jason the Angle. That, like, it's really, and so many people were really annoyed this wasn't like a blood like legendary, like a blood demon legendary. It's just like on a random artifact common. What's the other one? The Throng, Notorious Throng, where it's literally there's a zombie vomiting a zombie that is also vomiting a zombie. Innistrad, folks.
Innistrad.
Don't leave home without it.
Incredibly, like, they're just so beautiful, and they're just so engaging as pieces as well. You're not necessarily turned off with them. Wandering Mind is by Simon Dominic, is a flying brain with tendrils and horrible spiky fleshy protrusions and natty horrible wings flying in front of a lightning storm, and I can't stop looking at it. It's the most grotesque thing, but I can't stop looking at this piece of artwork. And I think this is the Innistrad that I think people, when they think of Innistrad, this is what they think of, really. And don't get me wrong, again, this is not putting down Midnight Hunt. Midnight Hunt could have almost been its own set. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, if obviously it had to have been set on Innistrad, but it was very much its own thing, trying to evoke its own sort of traditions, if you like, and, trying to touch on certain themes that we hadn't seen in Innistrad before. Crimson Vow is going, cool, you've had your interesting, like, pagan, culty werewolf set. Now let's go back to all the horrible bollocks and all the body horror, and, there's a little bit of eldritch horror in there as well, which Innistrad is for. And yeah, I'm absolutely here for it. Again, it's a little bit like the humor. This is definitely the set where they kind of went, cool, there are slightly fewer restrictions on the kind of flavor and function that we can have. We can now start pushing the boat out. And yeah, I just love it. I mean, again, Aerith Tormented Prophet.
Very, very
fucking
good.
hell, that card is
really,
just
really good artwork.
Ekaterina Burmak as well. Like, I don't think I've spoken about her as much. I believe partnered to Dimitri Burmak. I could be wrong, but I think they're married. If you look at their back catalogue, I mean, the one
good.
slight wrinkle is that they did illustrate a Moti, Celebrant of Bounty, where people were kind of not happy with the sort of religious iconography that was kind of commoditized in that piece. But, that's, there is also art direction involved there as well, so it's not just down to Ekaterina. But like Kaza, Royal Chaser, Lied, Cyborg of the Drowned from the last set, just every piece of theirs is just fucking rad. Just such a cool art style, incredibly detailed.
The alt art from Chandra from this set specifically, I think
Oh
might
yeah.
be one of my favorite arts in the entire set.
Uh-huh.
The Dress to Kill alt artwork, which shows Chandra looking not like a teenage pyromancer for once. She's got some regality to her.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, again, yeah, I've got her open literally on Scryfall, and everything, every artwork is just so strong,
Mm.
so strong. It's a really good art style. Really
Cool. Yeah.
Geodrome Jahada. Oh yeah. Okay.
Everything.
I love it. I love it when we shill over artists. It's fantastic.
Yeah, we've got a lot of time for Ekadrim with Mac, but yeah, cool. And that's my flavor pick for art for this set.
Cool. So I've got a weird like. I don't. This is. I guess this might be a less of a flavor pick. I mean, it's not necessarily less of a flavor because I feel like it's a very cool card anyway. This is Howlpack Piper, which flips into Wild Song Howler. It's a 2/2 human werewolf. It cannot be countered for 3 and a green. It has an ability 1 and a green tap. You may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. If it's a wolf or a werewolf, untap Howlpack Piper. Activate only as a sorcery. It's its daybound side. It's nightbound side. Whenever this creature enters the battlefield or transforms into Wild Song Howler, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Good, like cool. I like the idea of the idea of it's a call to arms on the first side, getting and then a wolf howls on the reverse side. That's cool and everything. The reason I bring this up is it was kind of like it's almost like a power level kind of thing, right? Of where I look at a card like this and I think, holy nonsense, that's such a strong, really really strong ability, and somehow. I look at it, I'm like, how can they get away with printing? Oh, it's 2 mana, you put anything from your hand into play, right? And I think the bonkers thing is that I look at that and then realize fragility. You've got to go a turn, like it's got to survive before it can drop a creature. You've got to have a good creature to put into your hand into play, kind of thing. Like it's crazy that a card that's got such a strong ability is essentially cheating every werewolf from your hand into play for like say 4 or 6 mana or whatever. Still isn't actually like that insane, and it still isn't. I mean, I'm sure you're going to be putting it into your werewolf deck. I'm sure it's a card you're looking at, and I really like this idea of where the reverse side refills your hand for the other side, and this kind of idea of because very few werewolves. This is the main reason I pick it for a flavor point of view. Because there are very few werewolves that the flipping back and forth facilitates itself, right? Of where you actively want it to go back to the daytime side. Because you're like, cool, now I can drop another wolf down, and then they'll all flip back over again. You get another one into your hand, and then you flip it back again. And I like this idea of where it tries to play into you going back and forth. So I don't feel like there was a lot of incentive in the last set to do so. I feel like there was a lot of incentive in the last set. If you get it to the night, you get night bound, and you kind of want to stay there, right? You kind of don't want to, you don't want to kind of leave because all of your other werewolves come in then bigger, stronger, faster, better, and like there wasn't a lot of incentive for the day bound side to kind of give you much. And I feel like in this set they've done that with a few of the cards of where they've tried to go, okay, look, let's give some incentivization because other players are going to want to flip them back. They should maybe be punished as well for flipping them back for you, that kind of thing. I think the thing that blew my mind with a card like this was just that. How is this not too powerful for a magic card? And in fact, how does my smart magic brain go, actually, that's pretty weak because, it's probably going to get killed before you have a chance to use its ability. Like Elvish Piper, for example, does the same. It's the same idea, right? I think it's like a 1/1 instead of being a 2/2, and it only costs a single green, tap and put a creature into play. And it blew my mind then as a kid when I first saw that kind of like, I'm sorry, what? Just for 1 and tap, you can just put any creature into play, and then the smart player would come over and go, "Oh, but it does cost 4 mana. It does have summoning sickness. It's only a 1/1. It can just die to anything, and you've got to have." I'm like, it's almost like the Timmy in me goes, "Yeah, shush. I'm putting Eldrazi from my hand into play for free. Who gives a shit?" But yeah, it's an interesting like. It's funny how it takes a card like this. It's really complicated. That does a lot of things somehow to realize that power creep is a very real thing. And sometimes immediate value is the only way to kind of get a card to be like, like competitively viable. Even if I do think everything else about the card does have this kind of very cool, like, flavor aspect to it. And I do still think, it's still annoying that it didn't fit Bard. You could definitely fit Bard at the end of that creature type line. Don't at me, Wizards. All right, you can fit human, Bard, werewolf, werewolf, human, Bard, human, werewolf, Bard. Maybe that's why they didn't do it. Okay, maybe it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't roll off the tongue. Sounds stupid. It does stupid, right? And this is another issue I find that we spoke about this I think before as well, didn't we? About how it's weird having both human werewolf on the front side where it could just be I don't know, a werewolf, because it kind of then ties you down because you can't have them multiple creature types, and having more than two always sounds really fucking clunky, like
Mm,
human soldier scout and things like that. Like it just doesn't sound right, and it's why I think also adding just a fraction onto the end of every fraction didn't work when you've got two creature types as well. Sometimes it's just a bit, it's not very succinct, right? But I feel like the bard would have added a little bit of extra flavor
maybe.
to it. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know why it stood out so much to me, but again, it's nice to have cards that do have a benefit on the daybound side, because I feel like that's something they were missing. It always feels like they filled a lot of the holes. It was like they deliberately went, "Hey, here's those werewolves in Midnight Hunt," and everyone went, "Yeah, but also did we? Oh, don't worry, they're coming in Crimson Vow. Hey,
yeah.
we got you."
You were right. They did put some of the better, more flavorful werewolves in Crimson Vow, because it just makes it. This just makes it sound like I'm really down on Midnight Hunt. I loved Midnight Hunt. I still love Midnight Hunt. I have had so much more fun with my werewolf deck than I initially thought I would when I first started seeing the spoilers. Like, it really flipped me around. I was a bit down on it when it first released, and then actually it grew on me quite rapidly, and I'm still up on it. But it is maybe a little bit annoying to me that they did put some of the more functionally viable and flavorfully like fun werewolves in the Crimson Vow set. If anything, and this is super fucking Vorthos nerdy, doesn't even matter. Shut the fuck up, Andy. Territory. I don't. I wanted the werewolf set symbol on all the werewolves in my set if I could.
Fucking hell!
I don't want
Jesus Christ.
the bat
I
set
get it.
symbol in them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fair. I understand. Yeah, it's also kind of interesting how the bat set symbol is so different from anything. I guess it's not actually that different from Dark Ascension.
yeah, it's very Dark
Interestingly
Ascension.
enough, they've got kind of a similarity. I think there was a lot of complaints at how the Midnight Hut set symbol looked very similar to the Adventures in the Forgotten Realm set symbol,
Yeah,
even
like
though they came
almost
directly
identical.
after each, almost identical, which is really bizarre because they could have done anything. I guess you can't do the wolf head because Scourge did that already as their set symbol, because that's a whole other conversation, right? Set symbols, but I
Have we
mean,
never done an
yeah.
episode on set symbols? We absolutely
Because
should.
it's both really boring and also really interesting. Like, it means we have to research everything throughout the entirety of Magic just to talk about set symbols. You know, I feel like
Oh, that sounds like so not something that we would totally do.
okay, fine, it's in there. Oh yeah, I'm writing it down. I'm writing it down.
Cool.
Good. What's your next one, buddy?
My next one is a specific card, and it is a specific card. This isn't me using this as a representation of something else in the set, and that is Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. If you don't know what Thalia, Guardian of Thraben is, firstly, do you even play Magic the Gathering? Secondly, it's a 1 and a white for a human soldier legendary creature, 2/1, first strike. No non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. This particular artwork is by Magali Villeneuve, and the flavor text reads, Thraben belongs to the living. I will not rest until it is cleansed. Has there ever been another example of a reprint in a third return block set of a card from the first time we were there for a legendary creature? I know it's very specific. Do you know what I mean? Because Thalia, Guardian of Thraben was originally printed in OG Innistrad, right? Obviously with a completely different artwork and a completely different context for the character. And then we got Thalia, Heretic Cathar in Shadows over Innistrad. And now we've got a third Thalia card, which we always knew we were going to get. Like, there was no way we weren't going to get a Thalia card. But it's the reprint of the original one from OG Innistrad, but with different artwork. Has that happened before?
I cannot recollect it ever happening, because the only other sets I can think of that we returned to multiple times are things like Dominaria, but it's not really the same. It's not the same thing, right? Because it's all the different continents and stuff like that. Ravnica, they specifically always give us new ones. Like Niv Mizzet always has some random new new legendary card or two in the same block, depending.
Yeah.
So I can't think. No, I can't think that they have. No.
Yeah, and
I don't think so.
It's really interesting to me, and it was such a big swing actually to give us a reprint, because Thalia, Guardian of Thraben is, correct me if I'm wrong, is very playable in Legacy.
Legacy,
Modern.
yeah, it's good. Any format that likes playing lots of cantrips, lots of cheap spells, any format that has like Storm or something like that, yeah, Thalia is very good.
And obviously there was a secret layer which had 4 copies of Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, all by different artists. Again, by a lot of them by Johannes Voss and I think Magali Villeneuve.
Yeah, it was 2 and 2.
2 and 2, yeah. And Johannes Voss was one of 2 artists that illustrated the original Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. So there's obviously a lot of heritage there. But I just think it's obviously that's really good for reprint equity, right? Because this is a very playable card. I don't know how expensive it is to buy now. I mean, it's a few quid. I think, yeah. So it's not like,
Five,
yeah. So it's not super
five
expensive. But
bucks.
if
Yeah,
you
it's not
need
super
4 for a
expensive.
deck and loads of people play this card in different formats, like that's still expensive enough. So obviously that's really cool. But the reason I'm picking it as a flavor pick is because Magali Villeneuve did the art for this, and the tweet that she sent out when she revealed this card, I've got it up on my phone, was Thalia, Garden of Thraben, MTG, Innistrad, Crimson Vow. Thalia has become a beloved character for me through my magic years painting her in various cards. I had the honour to paint her again, thanks to Taylor Ingverson, who was the AD, and I could go dark as I liked here. And fuck me, did Magali give Thalia a bit of a dark glow, not glow up. What's the opposite of a glow up?
A dank down.
A dank down. Thalia looks done with your shit, is what Thalia
done
looks
with
like.
all this shit. Yeah.
So this is a Thalia that has fought off demons. This is a Thalia that's fought off zombies. This is a Thalia that's fought... God, that's a tongue twister. A Thalia that has fought off Eldrazi and vampires and everything. And you can see in the background, so this shows Thalia inside what looks to me like a chapel, and wearing incredibly heavy armor, big pauldrons, like heavier armor than we've seen even in Heretic Cathar when she was a bit more armored up even then. This is now more so. Long, bedraggled hair, like down past her waist, a dark, harrowed look in her eyes, but determined, not broken, just more like, this is Thalia, like, in the kind of kick-ass years. And then the background, you see a paned window with a bunch of zombie hands pressing up against it. So this is obviously the sort of aftermath of where Liliana summoned a zombie horde to protect Thraben from the Eldrazi horrors in Eldritch Moon. And the flavor text reads, Thraben belongs to living, I will not rest until it's cleansed. So this is obviously Thalia dealing with that fallout. And whereas in other cards in this set, like the Catapult card I mentioned earlier, deal with the kind of maybe lighter side of the fact that there are now zombies everywhere, this is obviously dealing with the more serious issue of, oh, okay, like there's now an influx in Thraben of undead. This is exactly what in the original Innistrad she fought against. And yeah, I just think it's such an interesting idea to have the same card, literally the same card, not even a functional reprint. This is literally just a reprint with a completely different flavor in a return set, and it's just completely full circle for the character. Yeah, obviously, again, just the quality of artwork as well from Gali is obviously great.
Yeah, it's an interesting flavor point, right? Of can a character revert back to how we saw them in a previous? Because that's the point, right? Is that she's no longer considered to be like the renegade Cathar. She is now back to essentially being just what she was. It's almost like going back, as you said, going back to your roots of she is always going to be the guardian of Thraben. And do we need a third? Because this is an argument to be made against Odric, right? Because Odric is almost like they kept trying to be like, oh, we've got to give him a new character, give him a new character. And within this set, they turned him into a vampire, and they gave him the same kind of ability where it's like keyword soup tribal, right? Of where it does something keyword soupy. And it's so lackluster. And there's been like such pushback against his card to the point of where Mara's even been like, yep, we understand. We've taken it on board. We'll look at that going forwards. Like, because I guess they've taken like a beloved character. Whether Odric's more beloved or not than Thalia is questionable. But
Well,
in the
he's
same...
not at all.
Not at all, of course, but in the same breath of saying people expected more from the Odric card because of their love and their and their own biased expectation. It's almost like the reverse with Thalia, of where I haven't seen a single person kind of like going like, oh, she didn't get a new card. It's almost people going like, oh, interesting. They've kind of given her back the status that she. It's almost like that's her natural state, right? She's always the guardian of Thraben, and we just happen to catch her in a glimpse of being the heretic Cathar in
well, because the heretic Cathar was something that was placed upon her because of the Lunok Council kicking her out of the Church of Avacyn, essentially.
Precisely, yeah.
And then she started the Order of Saint Traft with Odric, and obviously the Geist of Saint Traft. But I think this is probably, and this might be like, again, I tend to do these big dramatic pontifications on magic cards in these kinds of episodes. This is probably one of the better examples of where you have that very classic spike mentality. And I don't even know if anyone actually has this mentality, but this is the kind of extreme of people going, well, they could just be literally like beige cards with writing on them and the game would still function exactly the same way. This is one of the most kind of prominent examples of where you could fight against that, because this is literally the same card, but because the flavor of it is so completely different, and the narrative that it's telling because of that flavor with the flavor text and the art and the abilities feeding into where Thalia is now as well, it is almost a new card. It feels like a fresh card, to me at least. Like, even down to like the dress that they're wearing, like their more heavy, slightly more generic armor. It still feels very Thalia, but it's not the kind of military tasseled shoulder pads. It's not the very Church of Avacyn. There's no Avacyn's collar on any of her dress, at least as far as I can see. Her hair has gone from being bright golden blonde, like it is in almost every other card, to like almost white blonde, because again, done with the shit. But I don't think she's gone grey. I just think that's the lighting is showing that this isn't the kind of innocent, almost cherubim Thalia that still had to deal with a lot in other sets, right? Like, Thalia was never like a helpless damsel. Thalia was always the protagonist and the hero and the kind of forefront leader. But Thalia was an example to the rest of Innistrad that there could still be beauty and ferocity and hope all in one encapsulated person, and that this person was like wrongly vilified by those who are corrupt. So to see them in this kind of more, I don't know, mercenary looking role. Again, this is flavor informing the function of the card, and I think in the most beautiful way. And I think it was a really bold move to reprint this card, and I love it. I'm absolutely here for it.
Yeah, her stance hasn't changed, but everything else about her has. Like, even if you have the card, the original like printing of Thalia Garden Thraben and the newest iteration side by side, it's like night and day. They look completely different. Obviously, it's funny because cards have changed in time since then. So we've got a new border. There's now the flourish of the legendary creature on the top of it as well. Like the cards do look completely different. And I guess it's also quite nice for those that weren't able to get the secret lair drop or the qualifier promo, the one that the one where it's the close up of her face. If you weren't able to get that or the secret lair drop, you now still have 4 different cards you can get, for your playset. You have the black and white treatment as well as the Dracula treatment as well. So you technically got all 4 with the original, and then the normal printing in the set as a playset as well, which is kind of interesting. Do you know what's kind of the thing that I think the only thing that I feel like maybe lets it down is that, and this is probably why I'm kind of glad they doubled down and just did a reprint, is that a lot of people are expecting there to be a flip card of where it's Thalia, and on the flip side it's Thalia like imbued with St. Traft, because St. Traft doesn't really show up at all during the set, which is kind of curious.
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed by that, actually.
And the other thing as well is we've got to a point of where we've had Umazawa Jite, give me Thalia's rapier.
Yes, very good shout. Yeah, because it's very distinctive. It's always has been.
That little, it's not. I mean, it's basically like, it is essentially just a thin blade, but it's the bit around the handle. I can't remember what it's called. Where it kind of does. It's like a handguard almost kind of feel, and it's got. Yeah, I just want give me it now, Wizards, please, or at least next set. It'd be quite nice to see.
Very.
Cool. Otherwise, it's quite. Yeah, it's a very interesting point and a very kind of bold point that they're willing to go. We can reprint characters in sets, especially if it's a high commodity card, without having to explain the flavor. If you hit the nail on the head with the flavor the first time, does it matter if it's the same creature, the same character the second time around? Like, I've had very little pushback, so yeah, it's kind of interesting. One, they got away with it, but more that they were willing to do it in the first place.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. Here for Thalia. Keep going.
Aye. So from one a character that we've seen back in the exact same fashion to a character that I wasn't ever sure we were ever going to see. Rudo Stromkirk.
Rudo!
We got him. And not only is he bringing all of his cool, sexy, lovely dimminess to the party, he's also bringing the deep the Dread Sea Lord Corthus as well, Lord of the Deep, also Crothus, Lord of the Deep. So it's gonna be, this is mouthy, as you say. There's a lot of words on Magic cards recently. 1 blue-black for a 1/4 vampire cleric. Obviously, he's legendary. He's got flying. When he enters the battlefield, put up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal a card. You may reveal that card. If it is a creature card with a mana value. Oh God, I nearly said CMC there. With mana value 6 or greater, transform Runo Stromkirk. and it transforms into a 3/5 Kraken Horror, Crothus, Lord of the
Yes.
Deep. Also a flyer. Weird, not going to touch that, but sure. Whenever Crothus, Lord of the Deep attacks, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of another target attacking creature. If that creature is a kraken, leviathan, octopus, or serpent, create 2 of those tokens instead. Whew, boy, this is
Mhm.
some powerful stuff. This is a lot of stuff going on, and it's a nice, succinct little bit of flavor. I mean, we've wondered for a while whether or not the Stromkirks. I mean, it's not been lent into that far, to be fair. In the same fashion that we've just kind of found out about this new house that leans into demons, we didn't know too much about Runo beyond his like kind of likes the sea, kind of has an obsession with this kind of god kind of thing.
Mm.
And I like that the card himself, instead of giving Crothus a separate card, flavor mechanically, Runo's the one that brings Crothus about. It's his faith and his machinations and his magic, his specific craft that brings about the Lord of the Deep. And I just like that Lord of the Deep doesn't just bring himself when he attacks, he brings others with them. He brings the entire ocean with him. And I kind of like the fact that Runo's clearly not shown up to the wedding. He's
Yeah.
not, like, he's doing his own thing. Yeah, there are some Stromkirks that are representing at the wedding, which is quite nice. They very easily could have just been like, he still didn't show up. We're still not going to show him. We're still going to wait until the next set. And I would have flipped the apps. I would have flipped everything. I'd have flipped my own house if I could have, because they managed to get not just Runo as a card, which I think succinctly has a lovely flavor. I like the fact that he's a flip card to have with 2 different characters. Is kind of, it epitomizes the thing I like about transform cards, right? Of where he is bringing about this. It's the same thing that happens with who was it that brought Ormondal around in the last set? The flip card.
Oh, sure.
What was his
Yeah.
name? Jadar or something?
Corrupted
Yeah,
bishop or
exactly.
whatever.
Precisely. This idea of the peons, the minions, kind of bringing about their elder gods. I like this idea quite a lot. I feel like it's a nice flavor beat and a nice succinct bit of flavor. But I also like the fact that we see all of them. We have all of the vampire nobles and lords and everything in this set. We still obviously get an Edgar. Everyone's very disappointed he's not all 3 colors. I'm going to tell the bitches to get over it, because realistically we didn't need. I guess the only reason that you could argue that they needed one was because you needed one that was slightly less automatically powerful and exceptionally overpriced, to be able to represent your Mardu tribe. But I kind of like the fact they've given you all of these different options in the Vampire Nobles.
Yeah, we've got
Bruno's
Anya Falconwrath shows up again.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and you're made of dishonor, and also she looks great. She's playing off this kind of like metrosexuality kind of aspect, which I think is really cool. I like the fact that they've also got Henrika Domnathi that we haven't seen before. Like this whole bloodline of vampires that kind of deal
in the
with
commander deck,
demons.
you've got Strephon Mora as well, of the Mora estate.
Exactly. So
Cool.
you've got all of these different vampire kind of tribes, which in the vampire set, yes, okay. So in Midnight Hunt, we only got 1 legendary werewolf. I feel like there's a big argument as to whether or not, well, that clearly werewolves don't have a lot of different flavor directions or mechanical directions they can go in, because look at all these different vampires they can do. It's like, well, yeah, werewolves do kind of a very specific thing, and they needed a representation that kind of made that mechanic kind of come to fruition. And I feel like Tovalar does that quite succinctly, that you didn't need to then muddy it with all these other werewolves that we haven't really heard about anyway. Whereas we've heard about all of these different bloodlines. This is the perfect time, as in the latest story Teferi says, like, weddings are about bringing people together. And it's quite nice to see all of the different households kind of under one banner, all of the same, like all there, all kind of bitching about each other, talking about each other, that kind of idea. I also like the fact that the wedding invitation doesn't offer a +1, right? Which is probably why Bruno didn't show up, because he couldn't bring Crothus with him. That's how I look at it anyway.
Yeah,
but
I mean, it's just so good to see. Like, I mean, obviously this is yet another Cthulhu reference, right? Like, and I sort of feel like they're saturating it a little bit, not just in Innistrad, but Magic in general. How many like Krakeny Lord things are there? But I mean, this is the archetype.
This is the Cthulhu, right? This feels like he looks more like it. I feel like he maybe he has more of a. Even Garuda was a Kraken horror, but kind of just looked like a normal Kraken. This looks like a fucking Kraken horror.
Yeah,
this could be
and the
god,
Matt
right?
Stewart artwork, which I think is fantastic for Crothus. I mean, obviously for Runo as well, is really evocative of it. Yeah, flying is a bit of a weird one. Maybe should have had like reach. I don't know.
I just even think, like, I guess they don't want to do something too similar with all the others, where they do like Island Walk or Swamp Walk, or like I would like Ward maybe. maybe on it, because like it's, you know, an eldritch monstrosity that's kind of like veiled by its own magic as well as all of like the ocean and stuff. I feel like Ward's a good example of that, of where if you put enough magic into it, you can fire into the depths of the ocean. Otherwise, the sea kind of protects all. I mean, I'm not sure. Okay, I just want to see him flapping. I guess, doesn't Cthulhu in lore have wings? He does, doesn't he?
Well, yeah.
Pretty sure. Not that this is
Yeah.
exactly a direct analog, but I mean, I think if Cthulhu
No.
can fly,
I
then
mean, I'll tell you what,
Quarters.
like the Eldritch Horror deck tech that I did like many episodes ago, I think would almost be completely revamped because of cards in the past sort of year or so. They've had this kind of Eldritch Horror thing running through so many
Sure,
different
yeah.
sets, and this one obviously, I mean, this would be a contender for the Commander if I wanted to take white out of it. Yeah, very cool, very cool. Rune Stromkirk, good to see you, mate.
Yeah, exactly, and didn't disappoint. The only thing I will say, and this is going to lead into my last like flavor pick, which is like an anti-flavor pick, is I'm surprised he was rare. You know, I'm
What, not
surprised that when
mythic?
Henrika Domnathi being a mythic is kind of like, okay, sure, but then the fact that Edgar, Runo, and Anya are all rares kind of is a bit weird to me. I'm not sure. I guess they couldn't fit. This is an argument, and there's a big thing that Mary's been saying recently about they have to weight mythics and cycles and stuff like that. And people get annoyed if one color has a mythic and the other color combinations don't. Like, cool, whatever, fuck it, yada yada yada. It's just strange. But I think it's quite a strong, unique, powerful ability that instead they give it to a generic cycle. But we'll get to that. What's your last pick?
My last pick is a very quick one. This one is Kaya Geist Hunter, which is legendary planeswalker Kaya for 1 white black. 3 loyalty when it comes in. +1, creature you control gain test touch until end of turn. Put a 1/1 counter on up to 1 target creature token you control. -2 until end of turn. If 1 or more tokens will be created under your control, twice that many tokens get created instead. And -6, exile all cards from all graveyards and create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. For each card exiled this way. Some 1/1 counter stuff going on there, some tokeny stuff going on there. I think when this card will make a lot more sense to people when they read the story a lot more, kind of what Kai is all about. I do like this kind of continued thing of having black-white be a very token-heavy strategy. Black-white is incredibly versatile just as a color combination. Like, I really don't think people give it credit enough. I know I am the Orzhov like simp here, but I like it does so much. It does aristocrats, it does tokens, it does life gain, it does aggro. It's fantastic. Let's just all agree white black is the best color pairing in Magic. Okay, good. Right, moving on. The Ryan Panko start here is the thing that I'm talking about. So this is the regular version for Kai Geist Hunter, although the alt art does have a similar feel. Kai is just a fucking badass at this point.
She is sick.
When have we ever seen a Kaya card that hasn't automatically made you go like, fuck, Kaya just rules? Like everything, even in the early cards, even in the really early cards. Like I think the very first Kaya Ghost Hunter, is it Kaya's? No, Ghost Assassin? Oh my god, I can't
Ghost
remember.
Assassin, I think it was.
Ghost Assassin. So there were 2 artworks in that one. And I think the original one where it's just Kaya propped up against a wall was maybe not the most evocative, but you still got her kind of cool ghost blades. And then the alt art of that one where it's Kaya phasing through a wall, people were like, holy shit, like, you know, that's really cool. And just every time you see Kaya in the story, in artwork, on key art, whatever, she's always got these different weapons that are being imbued with her ghost form energy. Because obviously she's got her ghost daggers. That's like her main thing. But then in Kaldheim, we've got the axes. And in this one, we've got, she's got her daggers down by her side, which are constantly on as well. I kind of assumed they're a bit like lightsabers. Like they were only really on when like you kind of activate them. But they're constantly on here. She seems to have some kind of ghost form bomb grenade strapped to the back of her belt.
Right.
Like that's got to be a grenade. That's like a holy hand grenade, right? I mean, it could just be like a vessel or something. But obviously, the money shot here is the fucking form crossbow that she's got in her hands. She's busting through the stained glass window, wielding a crossbow imbued with her own ghost form energy. Like, I mean, come on. Like Kaya is just
so cool,
sick. I just like there's no fancy words for me. There's no comparing this artwork to the Dutch Masters. There's no me talking about the philosophy of Magic and card design, function versus flavor. Kaya is just fucking awesome, and every time I see Kaya, I'm absolutely here for it. I mean, just like there's big oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to edit this down. I can't remember what's the name of the Bishop from X-Men. Right? Do you know the character of Bishop from X-Men?
Absolutely,
yeah. He's got the same sort of abilities that a lot of other mutants have, where it's about kinetic energy that they put into things. Like Gambit has the same thing. but
Precisely,
Bishop puts it into like firearms. So he'll put his kinetic mutant power into firearms and fire off bolts of like super powered charges and shit. And he's from the future and he looks awesome. Kaya is Bishop, just pumping her energy into like all
Bishop
these
meets
weapons.
Shadowcat, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
she's
yeah.
got such cool combination of
And you know what? I
abilities.
love the fact that they don't just rely on the fact that she can blitz through walls and shit. I really like that she's not a one note powered planeswalker. If you had a power like a superpower, which was like kind of more tangible, you would find interesting ways of using it, right? Like she's not just a Chandra who's just like, oh, I can set things on fire or whatever. Although to be fair to the character Chandra, that in earlier iterations of the character, you do see them having like elementals and stuff that they use their powers for or whatever. But it's Kaya is just so not one note, and everything they do is cool. It's just cool, Nathan. I really like Kaya.
Well, do you know what's funny is in her like normal like standard artwork, she can phase shift, right? But she's still just busting through the window.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to do that. You can just phase through. And she's like, nah, I'm gonna
Nah.
make dramatic entrance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. And in like the Raymond Swanland like full art treatment, like I love this idea of this is a fantastic art style choice we haven't really touched on at all. The blood petals, like that are in
That's a
this set.
motif that's through a lot of this set, yeah.
It's so cool. I love it so much, and you can see her slicing through a vampire, and as she's slicing, he's kind of like disintegrating into these petals. It's such a beautiful shot. And that was because I mean, yeah, I'm just looking through all of her artworks. Kaya's the nut. She's great, and even in the story, she's got like she comes across so cool. She's almost like infallible. She's quite an infallible character. Like, because she didn't even come across with very many. Like, usually they give like characters like hang-ups and stuff when you kind of get like from a protagonist point of view. Like, we're seeing a lot of things from Soren's point of view, and a lot of it's like people going, "Oh, actually, they're presenting him a much better light." It's like, yeah, but he's still got his like issues and stuff. Like, he's still got his biases and all that nonsense. With Kaya, she can't do no wrong, really. It's almost like they've kind of created like the perfect character where she's got really cool abilities. It can kind of be used in various different places. You're never sad when she shows up in a
Nope.
story. You never get kind of like, oh, here's Kaya again with all their cool weapons and cool abilities. I bet she's going to do something cool. What a shame. Yeah, you
Yep.
don't really get that. And I feel like it's the same with cards. Like, I like the fact they keep doing this, isolating her cards to specific things, right? So Oars of Usurper played around like it was only really useful against like getting really low to the ground threats and exiling things from graveyards. Like, it's not a generically super powerful planeswalker. Even in the Akari the Exorable, which I think is probably the closest you come to just like does the typical planeswalker thing of where +1 for benefit a small amount of advantage, card advantage on the minus, and then a big fuck off ultimate. A lot of her other planeswalkers cards don't really do that. They kind of play against the norm, which kind of feel like her character does that as well as everything else. Like, yeah, very, very good.
Very
Good
cool.
Kaya.
Like, even
Yeah.
talking about Oars of Usurper, that's potentially the artwork is probably the least Kaya-ish artwork out there because she's just stood there in her Oars of Regalia looking cool. But even then, she looks super cool. Like, she's not even doing any ghost form shit in that. She's just like, yeah, I run the Oars of, fuck you. Like, it's just so
Exactly.
good.
Yeah,
So
so
good.
what are you gonna do about it? It's like
Yeah,
nothing.
like
Literally can't touch you.
I have absolutely no issues with the fact that Kai is quickly becoming the face of the game. I think it's well overdue for a character that's not. I mean, she is technically part of the Gatewatch now, but not like classic Gatewatch. Like, I think Kai is because they're trying to push Vraska and Ral as well, and they're both very cool characters. A lot of time for Vraska especially, but Kai just blasts them both out the water as an interesting protagonist.
Yeah, I kind of think it's funny now. I look at the oath of Kaya as well, and she's technically holding her hand up in phase shift. Is that kind of like crossing your fingers?
Yeah.
Does it really count? Because does it really count? It's like, oh, I'm oathing, but I wasn't tangible. It doesn't count.
Yeah.
Can't hold me to it.
Look, I wasn't tangible. You can't have a go at me if I'm not tangible.
Oh, I love it. Fantastic. Good.
Yeah.
I mean, brilliant. Right, good. Well, my last one's a little. It's a little bit of a downer, and that's because I kind of really enjoyed the adversary cycle. As much as I was kind of annoyed that they were, and I think I said this in the episode, I was like, yada, 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 abilities don't really matter. They've clearly pushed these to be a cycle of strong cards at Mythic. We have the cemetery cycle. And the issue I have for this is twofold, right? I mean, my main issue is that I thought we weren't putting mythics on generically powerful cards. And I know that's something that's beaten to kind of to death a little, but sometimes I find it's really prominent with some cycles. And like, there was again a conversation because someone was complaining about, I can't remember if it was that Edgar wasn't 3 colors or something along those lines. So Mario basically did a long breakdown of how trying to please every player is so difficult. And I mean, that's an obvious thing if someone who's not super biased, who understands how, like, you know, creating a product is going to be. And he said, like, things like waiting of cycles, and they want to, if they didn't do the cycle effectively, then they get complaints for that as well. But I don't see the point of doing a generic ability, and this is because the cemetery cycle all have an ability of when they enter the battlefield, or sometimes something else, whether it's when they attack or when they die, or I think that's only two things actually. Yeah, when they attack or when they die, like, it will trigger again to exile a card from a graveyard, and then based on what card they exiled from that graveyard, an effect happens. So for the white one, for example, when it ETBs, you exile a card from a graveyard and it's got flash, and whenever you, the person who plays the Cemetery Protector, play a land or cast a spell that shares a card type with the exiled card, you get a 1/1 token. With Cemetery Illuminator, the blue one, it's a spirit. The card that you exile, you can look at the top card of your library, and once per turn you can play that card if it shares a card type with it. Cool. Cemetery Desecrator, the black one. Whenever you exile a card, you remove X counters from target permanent, where X is the mana value of the exile card, or you give a creature -X, where X is the mana value of the exiled card. Okay, cool. The red one has a punishment effect of when it ETBs, you exile a card, and whenever any player plays a land or casts a spell that shares a card type with it, Cemetery Gatekeeper deals 2 damage to that player. Okay, cool. And then Cemetery Prowler, the green one, exiles a card when it enters the battlefield or attacks. Bear in mind, this is on a 3/4 for 3 mana vigilant. Fucking fuck green. But whenever it attacks or enters the battlefield, exile a card, and spells you cast cost 1 less for each card type that share a card type. I get it, right? So they're all playing around this idea of you plunder the grave, right? And then you get an added benefit or a specific way of kind of your play style kind of bends around it. I kind of get that. And as a cycle, I get it. They all have different aspects of how they interact with the cemetery, even though Cemetery Protector compared to Cemetery Gatekeeper, but one's a vampire, one's a human. Is it the same cemetery? Are they different cemeteries? And this is where I find, like, it kind of falls apart a little bit for me, because I don't understand beyond the fact that clearly they all do powerful things, right? And I feel like some of them are plants, like Cemetery Gatekeeper is a punishment effect in red. It's kind of like Harsh Mentor, or cards like that kind of you play and they punish your opponent for just doing the thing they're naturally going to do, and it gives the color a bit of reach. I get it, cool. Blue very rarely gets to play off the top of the library effect unless it's something like, say, Future Sight, right? And cards like that, or Precognition Field, which is usually specific to, like, instants or sorceries or whatever. But it's nice to see that on a creature effect. White making tokens, cool, whatever. Black killing things, cool, whatever. Green making things cheaper, cool, whatever. But I don't feel like they have an overarching kind of thematic amongst them, apart from the mechanical. And this is where I kind of feel like it falls down, is it's a mythic by mechanic, not a mythic by flavor. And I quite like the adversary cycle, because even though they all did the same thing, of where you kind of almost felt like they shoehorned the mechanic and pushed it to kind of work for the cycle of where they have multi-kicker and they do a different thing each when you multi-kick them. Cool, I get it. But they also had this idea of they're all stalking each other around this, probably the hostel, as we said, like, and they've all kind of got this murder mystery aspect, or they're trying to kind of figure out and kind of battle against each other. I don't get what the flavor of this cycle is, and I feel like that's kind of what lets me down a little bit. Where other cards like Runo that have a lot more flavor integrity don't get mythic status, specifically because they just did the mythic cycle of the set, and 1 or 2 of the cards are clearly going to be very strong, and so it's going to make it really expensive, and it kind of plays against what the whole point of mythic should be, in my mind. And I feel like that's where I feel like the difference between this set and the last set were. Whereas I feel like last set I found flavor in aspects that I wasn't expecting, whereas in this set I kind of expected them to kind of carry that on, and it always felt like there were certain parts that just didn't quite land. I feel like this cemetery cycle is kind of indicative of how sometimes they just go, we're not just here to make cards to make Vorthos is happy, we're also here to make cards for the spikes. We're also here to make cards for tournaments. We're still here to make cards that are going to be played to win, and that's cool. Just don't put them at mythic. And I know it's not necessarily a flavory thing, but the fact that they are lacking in flavor, I feel, is the thing that irks me the most about it. And again, I like the idea that they all maybe are all different patrons of this cemetery, but it just doesn't quite have that same finesse, that same flourish that I feel that the other cycle did, the adversary cycle did, and it just sits a little sad on my shoulders, because I feel like there are other really cool mythics in this set. things like Maniform Hellkite. I know it's a dragon or whatever, but it does a cool thing. And Cultivated Colossus, which is just all kinds of nutter butters and with abundance in play. I also have criticisms about if you're going to make a mythic dragon, maybe make it look slightly better than any of your other fucking dragons. Like, just make it look like it's doing the thing it's doing.
I mean, we
Yeah.
spoke at length last time about the fact
Yeah,
that we've got dragons
exactly.
on Innistrad. Boring. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I'm also going to end on a bit of a downer.
Good.
I kept this at the end. The reason I didn't start with this and then we did all the good stuff is because I sort of feel like this is a very personal to me taste thing. Whereas everything else, I kind of feel like, a lot of people can find a lot of joy in a lot of things that I've said. This one, I feel like anything where I'm unhappy, I tend to feel like I'm in the minority because I just don't enjoy maybe, or I find things maybe annoying that other people just kind of don't give a shit about, which is fine and actually probably a lot more healthy, because this is just a card game. Pardon me, still getting over a bit of a cough. And it is the Planeswalker Chandra dressed to kill. Chandra dressed to kill. Now, I'm also going to flag up here. I changed my pronunciation of Chandra and Chandra willy-nilly because I know it's Chandra, but I've said Chandra.
Chandra.
I've said Chandra for so long. So I do apologise straight off the bat. This is already undermining it. But yeah, Chandra Dressed to Kill is 1 red for a legendary Planeswalker Chandra for 3 loyalty, +1. Add red. Chandra Dressed to Kill does 1 damage to up to 1 target player of Planeswalker. +1 again. Exile the top card of your library. It's red. If it's red, you may cast it this turn. It's red. -7. Exile the top 5 cards of your library. You may cast red spells from among them this turn. You get an emblem with, whenever you cast a red spell, this emblem deals X damage to target. Any target where X is the amount of mana spent to cast this spell. So, it does all the red things. It's kind of a very solid cross-the-board Red's Planeswalker, really. Like, it does the impulsive draw. It does the pinging. It does a little bit of, like, ramping in the kind of sort of red way of just kind
Ritual.
of giving you that little extra push, right? It's just not giving you, like, I mean, it's not like a green where it just kind of ramps you forever. Like, it'll give you, like, 1 influx. It'll go, oh, there you go. Here's the mana to do the thing this one time. My biggest problem with this card is the name. This might be the worst name ever given to a Planeswalker I've ever seen, and I hate it. Chandra Dressed to Kill. What? Because she's wearing a fucking dress? Who is she killing? She's a killer now. She's literally a killer, but that's fine because the pun in the name is that she's wearing a fucking dress this time round. I really don't usually like going after individual like aspects of a card in terms of its kind of like creativity, because somebody or a group of people even clearly thought this name was creative, that it was funny, it was a bit of a pun, that it kind of changes things up. It's like, hey, we see Chandra in this whole kind of new aesthetic, like, it's in this artwork. For the card that I'm looking at, which is the regular artwork by Victor Titov, and then obviously the alt art frame by you did say it earlier, by Ekaterina Burmak, of course, who we were talking about, which is beautiful as well, by the way. That's fine, but why is the name informed by what I can only assume is literally just the artwork? Is it story relevant that she's wearing a dress outside of her being able to attend the wedding, presumably at some point? Obviously, we're keeping this slightly separate from the stories. I just, like, why? This doesn't say anything about the Planeswalker. I hate it. So you have Chandra Ablaze, Chandra Acolyte of Flame, Awakened Inferno, Fire Artisan, Bold Pyromancer, Fire of Kaladesh into Roaring Flame, Flame Caller, Flames Catalyst, Flames Fury, Heart of Fire, Chandra Nalar, Novice Pyromancer, Pyro Genius, Pyro Master. Those are all of the other Chandra Planeswalker cards. And firstly, just rattling those off, boring as fuck, by the way.
I was going to say, do you think they ran out of fire words?
I
that might be the only reason.
I think not only have they run out of fire words, I think they've run out of things to do with Chandra. I think the character is dead. If there was ever a card to point to go, so when did Chandra just become like nothing? It's this one, if that's how they feel like they're going to represent her. Compare this Planeswalker in general and the naming conventions used for against Ajani. Ajani has Adversary of Tyrants, Caller of the Pride, Goldmane, Mentor of Heroes, Inspiring Leader, Steadfast, Strength of the Pride, Great-Hearted, Unyielding, Valiant Protector, Vengeant, Wise Counselor. None of those are boring. None of them don't evoke exactly where Ajani is at this point in time, because that's what Planeswalker cards are like, right? That was the justification of having Planeswalker cards being able to be on the battlefield at the same time as other planeswalkers with the same name, because they changed that rule. It used to be that you couldn't have two Jaces on the battlefield at any one time, even on the other sides of the battlefield. Now it's like you can have as many as you like as long as they don't have the same name, because now they're legendary planeswalker Ajani, right? That's their type. It's not actually their name. So it gets around the legendary rule. But the idea was that the Planeswalker cards are that Planeswalker in a very specific moment in time. Like, you are summoning them in the metaverse of the game to your side. You are summoning Mentor of Heroes when he's mentoring heroes on Theros. You are summoning Ajani to your side when he's the Great-Hearted, because he's pouring his all into trying to save Ravnica from Nicobolas and his army. Not only do they fucking never do that with the Chandra anyway, at least with the other Chandra names, it evokes who she is as a mage. She's obviously a pyromancer, as many of them infer. In the M20 series, where they did the three Chandras, and it was kind of her kind of journey through learning pyromancy, that was great. You had Acolyte of Flame, Awakened Inferno, and Novice Pyromancer. That showed you where she was. Fire of Kaladesh into Roaring Flame. Not the most inspired, but those Flipwalker cards definitely gave you a bit of a story, right? And I just don't know what they're trying to do with Dress to Kill. It just seems so hollow. Like, what's the Dress to Kill? She could be doing anything. If you would just said, "Oh yeah, Chandra Dress to Kill," what does that tell you? Who she is? Does that tell you what her powers are? Does that tell you what she's doing right now? No, it just tells you that she's probably wearing something fancy, and it being a combat card game, that she's probably going to hurt something. I hate it so much, Nathan. Am I being weird? Is this a weird thing to pick up on?
No, because I think you're not the only one who's picked up on it. It's funny that I think it depends on the stance you on the stance you take, right? Because you mentioned in one breath that you like the idea of when you catch a planeswalker in a moment, right? And this, if anything, I feel like epitomizes that entirely. The problem is it's so almost generic in the way it's doing it. And it's funny because the first time I saw the card, I saw the alternate artwork, right? I saw the Berman artwork, yeah, and that was for me. I was like, that sold it, because I was like, damn, we've never seen Chandra look like this before. We've never seen her looking fanciful, and I like this idea, dressed to go. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, and she's got like the flame kind of motif off the back of her shoulders. And then I saw the regular artwork, I was like, oh. No offense to the card, I think the card arguably still looks really good. I like it, how it pops in. I also like when planeswalkers interact more with the banner at the top, because they kind of, that's sort of their thing, right? If their character always overspills into the banner, and mostly it's just usually the top of their head. Great, good. Whereas with Dress to Kill, like, you've got flame effect even covering up one of the letters, which, you know, may or may not be a bad thing, but like, because it's a little bit more anime-y, it's a little bit more cartoony. Like, I feel like it doesn't sell that Dress to Kill aspect so much. It's more focusing on the killing side rather than the Dress to Kill aspect. I don't think you're wrong in feeling rubbed, because I feel like they deliberately tried to push that. I think they kind of wanted to move away from being anything that's, say, fire related, and this was kind of their way of going, well, can we go tongue in cheek? Because that's kind of what Chandra's like. It's almost like if she was to name her own card, this is how she would name herself. And that's the kind of reason why I think it maybe gets away with it. Of like, who's giving the Planeswalker the title on their cards?
The in the moment thing, I can see what you're saying, where this is her literally in the moment of her wearing a fancy dress. But if you, again, pulling it back to Ajani, and I know it's unfair because Ajani's cards are actually incredibly flavorful. I know I'm kind of putting her against like one of the toughest kind of, comparisons. But if you, the in the moment thing is what I mean by, Ajani Vengeant, and that also fed into his colors, where he was the Boros Planeswalker. He didn't have any green in his color identity in this particular one. Ajani Vengeant evokes where he is as a character, not just literally where he is physically. Like Ajani, Adversary of Tyrants, gives you in M19, gave you an idea of him fighting Nicobolas. I just can't. I don't know. This is where it's gone too far. You know how I've always been a little bit sort of unsure about like puns and kind of whimsical comedy in all of Magic. In this very episode, I've spoken about how I liked the fact that they had fun with, dying to serve and all that kind of thing. That is up to the line where I'm like, cool, because this a very sort of it's juxtaposed with the quite grim artwork and the grim aesthetic of having zombie butlers. Like, it kind of plays off of ideas. Whereas Chandra Dressed to Kill is just them being like, huh, because she's wearing a dress. I hate it. It's a shit planeswalker. It's the worst planeswalker name they've ever done. And yeah, there you go.
I think my concern is probably from a narrative point of view, they seem to be kind of stuck in a rivet with her where she doesn't really have much character diversity. Okay, they've brought back the fact that her and Adeline are kind of canoodling, and they've kind of come back on their destroying of decent canon with her and Nissa. But I feel like otherwise, narratively, I feel like they don't really know what to do with her in terms of, because she's one of the few planeswalkers that hasn't had a second color. I think Jace is one of the only other ones I can think of that has only ever been that one color without having a second color, because her psychograph, like her profile, is very much, she's a red walker. And they've done, as you say, they've done so many versions of her now. It's like you've kind of written yourself into a corner. Unless you do something that's super weird and different like this, then it's just another flamey damage planeswalker, right?
Chandra,
and even like something like
need to be here. She just
didn't like Torch of Defiance, I think, is a perfect example of how to do her right, of where you give her slight different things. Like we hadn't seen her do a ritual effect. We hadn't seen her do like impulsive draw yet. I think, did it come out before the other one? I think there was one other one that might have done an impulsive draw aspect. Who knows? But I feel like they're kind of mechanically and creatively kind of written themselves into a corner with Chandra, and this kind of is overspilling.
Yes, so sorry, actually, yes, Torch of Defiance. Sorry, on the screen that I'm looking at, Torch of Defiance is well away from the other Planeswalkers. Torch of Defiance is actually a really good example of how to do a multi-layered name with narrative. This is wild to me, actually. I missed that one out. Torch of Defiance in Kaladesh gave Chandra a purpose and like a narrative foothold in that story. Because Torch of Defiance, Torch, obviously fire, pyromancy, excellent, cool, firing all cylinders, but also the Torch of Defiance, or the Torch of Rebellion, is kind of in the lexicon of that kind of that sort of world of language. If you're talking about rebellions, or if you're talking about showing the way forwards, a torch is something that you think of. So they have done it in the past where they've married up all the themes, and it's been like, cool, excellent, that's what we need from Chandra. It's just they didn't even miss the mark here. It's like they didn't try. It's like they just went, here's the joke. That's how little importance she has in this narrative. That's how little she impacts actually what's going on around her. They couldn't even come up with a Planeswalker name that mattered. She's dressed to kill. Could you imagine that on any other Planeswalker? Could you imagine like Liliana feeling fancy?
Like, no, but I can imagine Liliana
dressed to kill would work for Liliana way better than it would do for anyone else. But do you know what I mean? Like, could you imagine if Jace reading a book? It just doesn't like what? I just like, what the fuck is going to be next for this character? I just don't even know.
Yeah, it's true.
I just don't. I know it sort of sounds
she
mad.
Settles down on Innistrad, and that's it. She can just be done. I mean, she's too much of like, Lay, I want to be a part of the Gatewatch. She can stuck with me forever.
Oh man,
kind of thing. I know.
The day that Chandra burns out, and then Kaya just kind of takes the place of, is the day I'm happy. Give Kaya red, you cowards. Make her Mardu. And then we've got our Red Walker.
Yeah, arguably, I think like the naming conventions in general this set. I mean, Geist Hunter isn't very evocative. Like, we know she hunts Geist. That's kind of what she does. She's there to kill the spirits. Like, in the Mirthless is kind of cool. I don't mind it too much. But Teferi, who slows the sunset. Like,
Teferi's another one. Teferi and Jace are both ones.
That was the thing.
That's
the thing he did in the story. Cool, good job, great. Is that a title that he's going to now be known as? He slows the sunset. He can slow any sunset. He can slow everything down. That's what he does. Yeah.
You need a sunset slowed cool Teferi. Like, right.
Easy, man. You need a few more hours in your afternoon to crack in with that studying. Try Teferi aid. I don't know. I mean, I guess naming conventions of Planeswalkers are hard when you've done literally like 20 of them. And it's just funny that they kind of clearly tried to push the envelope, and they just went a bit too far. They've pushed the envelope so far, the letter's fallen out.
Yeah, but no, but if again, right? So I'm just going to read off the Lilianas, okay? Because I've spoken about this enough, and we're running a little bit long. But you have Liliana Death Mage, Death's Majesty, Death Wielder, Dreadhorde General, heretical healer into Defiant Necromancer, of the Dark Realms, of the Veil, Waker of the Dead, Liliana Vess, Untouched by Death, The Necromancer, The Last Hope. Now, arguably, on the face of it, many of those you could sort of argue are just, it's just a play on her being a necromancer, death mage, death majesty, death wielder. And a lot of them are. But then you have other one like Liliana Dreadhorde General. She is the Dreadhorde General. So even though that's so specific to her in that literal moment of time, and it doesn't have a very sort of high fantasy name like the Ajani ones do, like Mentor of Heroes is kind of just a cool name that he could take anywhere. Dreadhorde General is very much a place in time, but Liliana is the Dreadhorde General. It's not like Teferi who like slows the sun or whatever the fuck his name was, because that is something that he just did. It's not who he is. You know, Defiant Necromancer plays in with heretical healer of the Dark Realms and of the Veil, give you a really like satisfying look into Liliana in her place and time in her past, and indeed shows a lot of character growth going there forwards. You know, Waker of the Dead maybe isn't the most exciting, but it is, you know, it evokes where she is post War of the Spark. You know, yeah.
It's all right, buddy. I feel you. We've bookended this with me going, but about the set in general, just something not quite fitting, right? And then we're ending with a very specific card. Like, so it's fine to be exasperated, like especially when they do so much. I feel like it's kind of good to highlight the things we don't necessarily like, because it's very easy for us to be so stuck on the look, they've given us a giant slug horror, yay, and not kind of focus on like the little things that kind
I do
of
like
also
the slug horror.
Yeah, I do wish they'd stop slapping horror onto the end of everything though. Like there's 2 Kraken horrors in the set, there's a slug horror. Like it's like, it was cool when it was like got like, oh, the nightmare horror, oh, that's exciting, or like, you know, like I don't mind when every now and again they like put like something new in, like demon nightmare and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, okay, but now they're just slapping horror on the end of anything. I know it's Innistrad and they can kind of get away with it, but okay, that's cool. That's enough, Wizards. That's enough.
All right. So, lots of good, one incredibly terrible. I think I really enjoyed Crimson Vow, like looking at it from like a flavor point of view. I actually think there is a lot in there, and maybe it's symptomatic of the fact that they released it so close to Midnight Hunt that people are getting even more whiplash than they normally would with sort of the influx of products. But it is kind of nice to have 2 very different flavors from the same plane, rather than a lot of the time, especially in the 3 block sets, you kind of felt the flavor just carried on over a bit too much, and it was just more of the same. Whereas Midnight Hunt versus Crimson Vow, they delivered. They had 2 completely different Innistrad sets back to back, creating a whole larger narrative that hopefully, with the stories and the story articles, Crimson Vow are very good, by the way. Like, yeah, hopefully it will just kind of all stitch together. So yeah, so I convinced you a little bit. Then I convinced you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I've changed my tune. I mean, I've come around to it again. I just because I don't like a mythic cycle doesn't mean I shouldn't like the set, right?
Fair enough. And just because I think the name is the worst name they've ever done doesn't mean I don't like the set either.
Exactly. Also, at what point is a Cobbled Lancer the zombie horse not just a fucking centaur?
Right, Cobbled Lancer is terrifying, and the thing with Cobbled Lancer is that I feel like, because they don't have centaurs on Innistrad, at least not that we've seen.
Well,
so
they do now.
Well, but this is someone who, it's like, imagine if you made up a dragon. If you're like 2 and you've never seen a dragon before, and you draw a picture of a dragon like it's your original idea, and then someone else goes, "Oh yeah, they have those," but yours is obviously some kind of nightmare version. This is like some stitcher on Innistrad has gone, imagine if he had the body of a man, but the behind of a horse. What would that look like? And he's designed it. And Planeswalkers from everywhere else has gone, oh my fucking god. Like, no, this is
terrifying centaur I've ever seen.
And this is like, what a centaur looks like on Innistrad. Yeah. No, I love that idea. I think it's great.
Yeah, cool.
All right, guys, let us know via our social media what you think of Crimson Vow. Do you completely disagree? Do you think that this is maybe the most like ridiculous I've ever been talking about Chandra Dress to Kill, or do you disagree with any of our actual flavor picks? Do you feel like this set has kind of fallen a little bit flat? Do you agree more with Nathan? Do you agree more with me? Do you think that Vulcan Barger's excellent artwork of Edgar Markov, Charmed Groom, is actually maybe a little bit disappointing, because what we really wanted was sexy Edgar Markov from the Judge promo series?
Right? I mean,
let us know.
We got an alt artwork. It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
Old decrepit
It's fine.
Markov's fine.
Falkenberg is a really good artist. It's a very good artwork. It's just not maybe the sexy Edgar we all deserved.
He's so old. He's so old.
He's so old and he's so shunned, and I can't wait for him to flip his shit at everyone. All right, let us know via our Twitter at mtflavouring. My personal Twitter is at AndyManface. Nathan's, yours is
At the Fox in the Moon.
Emails go to mtflavouring@gmail.com. And yes, we're going to wrap it up there because we've done a very old school episode where we've gone way over an hour and a half. We used to scale it back to like an hour, but now we've gone right back to our roots of waffling way too much. So the only thing that remains for me to say, guys, is thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
We'll see you soon. Waffles!